Hey guys, and welcome back to the briefing room. Seamus Kelly is at it again of Den of Geek. He had another story about Robotech, specifically the developments of the Robotech live-action movie, and I've got some notes here about it. First of all, he asked them about whether or not they're continuing Warner Brothers' work or whether they started from scratch. And they revealed that Sony did not buy any of Warner Brothers' developments. It was a day one rewrite. They started from scratch. And honestly, that makes sense. I mean, if Warner Brothers had something, then Sony Pictures would have purchased it, or Warner Brothers would have moved more quickly on it. They clearly did not have really anything going for them. Tommy Yoon specifically said, "It's a page one rewrite. It's a clean slate. It may share commonality in the fact that it is based on the original series. However, the writers are taking a different approach to it." Now let's take a break and really think about what he just said. It is based on the original series. I know there's a lot of Robotech fans out there that just want them to make a movie that's like word for word of the show, and that's not realistic. One, they don't have the rights to the Macross property at all. Two, that would not be entertaining. You may think it's going to be entertaining because you love the property, and you might think that you like it, but you'd be watching a different version of the same thing. You'll know what's going to happen. You'll know all the twists and turns. You're basically just watching the same show, but on a different platform. And that's just... They're not going to do that because it's not really that entertaining. You think it is, but it would not be as entertaining as you think it is. And that rumor that was going around that I was fairly confused about the Sony deal not being signed, they debunked that. They said that the deal had been signed and was finalized before San Diego Comic-Con 2016. Those stories really confused me, just because they would not have been giving the amount of details they were giving if the deal was not finalized. I was very confused about those stories, but it turns out they were false anyway. So it's a good thing I was confused on them because there was nothing to them. Kevin McKeever talked about Sony, and the communication they have with Sony that they didn't have with Warner Brothers. He said they, of course meaning Sony, they want to learn about the franchise. There are a lot of people at Sony who have different knowledge levels of the franchise. Then he goes on to give examples like he normally does, but I mean, it's clear what he's talking about, so I'm not going to go through all those. Sony is very pro Robotech. They're very engaged to the point where we're really talking with them, which did not happen with the previous studio, Warner Brothers. That's in line with what they've been saying this entire time. That's no different. And remains to be seen whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, because normally that's a good thing with, the studio being involved with the whole production. That's normally a very good thing. But Harmony Gold hasn't exactly proven to be the best stewards of the franchise. So whether or not that ends up being a good or bad thing still is up in the air. Um, when they were asked about about merchandise based on the movie, they didn't give exact answers, but they pretty heavily hinted towards it. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. Most movies that come out have some form of merchandise attached to them, especially a movie of that kind with a lot of sci-fi elements and so forth, have a lot of merchandise to go along with them. That's the Star Wars effect right there. Uh, that's kind of an obvious. No, no, put it down. That's kind of an obvious thing, and obviously that's Harmony Gold's bread and butter anyway. Now, again, whether or not the merchandise is any good, we'll see. That's way off in the distance right now. They asked whether or not Titan Comics are going to release comics based on the movie universe. And Tommy had this to say about it. Titan is interested in Sony when they're ready. In terms of getting more fans into the classic universe of Robotech, Sony has been very supportive of us. And then they reiterated that the animated productions are not off the table, but I've covered that before in a previous video about Sony kind of having an influence on not getting those in. But this is what confuses me about that. It's very difficult to have two universes coexisting together. As much as I would love to see Academy, as much as I would love to see them finish the Shadow Chronicles story, as much as I'd like those things, it really does not make sense for there to be two different universes. And he specifically said classic universe, which means that the movie is definitely gonna be a retelling of a different Robotech universe. Like I said, running two different universes of the same franchise is a very difficult task for any studio, but I doubt that Harmony Gold or even Sony doesn't actually have a great track record either. I'm not sure either of them could pull off a dual universe thing. I've mentioned this back in one of my previews for the live action movie. A great idea that they could have that would work is they could do a shared universe, like a MCU or a Star Wars type thing, where everything's connected. They could have the movies be connected to the show without being retellings of the show. Like I said, they could go on and do. They could go on and do a movie based on Rolf Emerson and Vince Grant. Characters that we know had something to do with the Macross saga, but we don't know what they did in the Macross saga. They could do something like that. We'd know some of the events that happened, but we wouldn't know the overall story because never happened in the show. We don't know what their story was in the show. They could do something like that, and then they don't have to run two parallel universes to each other. Because that's difficult for the fans to follow. It's difficult for them to keep track of. It just becomes a mess running two different universes. But that sounds like what's going to happen. I'm still excited about those Titan comics. I'm just wondering when they're going to come out. Uh, and that goes back with the animated future not off the table. That again would be running two parallel universes, and uh, like I said, Sony may claim Sony is supportive of the classic universe, but it doesn't connect to Sony. Sony wants there to be something that benefits Sony. So I'm still not confident that Shadow Rising is ever going to come out, or Academy is ever going to come out. As much as I'd love to see those stories finished, but we'll see. That is something I have been wanting to know. I've been wanting to know a little bit more. While they still didn't give too many details, it's nice to know a little bit more about what's going on. Let me know what you think about this story. I will share the link in the description. You can follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, on all of those things. Links are in the description below. Uh, Follow Seamus Kelly. I mean, he's on Twitter too, and he's been breaking a lot of Robotech related stories. So if you're more into wanting to know what's going on with Robotech, he's the guy to follow for that. Because most of my news stories recently have just been redirects of his news stories and my analysis and conjecture of what's being said in those stories. Uh, so follow him, and then you'll know what some of my video topics are. Uh, Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys later.